So, hey, you guys can't see it right now, but I'm here with an agency owner, and we're just here to talk about the challenges he's currently facing. So, Richard, I just want to go through my understanding of what you've said to me to articulate for the audience. So, you have a background in paid media, specifically Facebook. Meta, Facebook. You have been in that niche for several years. You come from a background of social media previous to that, and you recently decided to switch to something that's newer, UGC, user-generated content, which is seems to be a twist upon influencer marketing where content is created and delivered to the end company. So in that example, it could be one of our previous coffee shops that we've owned or our catering business. If we go out and do events monthly, having someone come and produce content and deliver it to us in a variety of formats. But the interesting thing here is that you switched because you feel that the market has become more saturated in terms of competition for running meta ads. The client, the end client, so let's just say, for example, it's Adidas, simple example, they have grown in their expectation of the scope of service, i.e., they want things that come with it alongside Meta, and that also they have grown in their sophistication themselves, also in their understanding, because Meta's a mature ad platform now in a way probably it wasn't five more mature in a way that it wasn't 5 to 8 years ago. Just to double check, first of all, Richard, is that more or less an accurate summary just to sense check my understanding?
Yeah, exactly. So the ad side, the clients now do it campaign by campaign basis.
Yep.
And if it does do really well, you have the danger of the client saying, we want to bring it in-house because we're giving you too much money because you're making too much profit off their
Sure.
campaigns.
Sure.
And then the UGC is more focused around on content.
Yep.
So it's more content focused where people need content every day. So the idea here is offering video content to them could be something that's more beneficial long term. And
Yep.
that way you can
Yep.
kind of build a model around it to kind of scale.
Yep.
And the demand should be higher than ads because when you use ads, it's a very specific need to promote a very specific range of products.
Yep.
Whereas you could argue with video content, you can essentially need it no matter what your situation to promote a product or to use on your posts, or it kind of has more shelf life than one or two ad campaigns that you run. It doesn't apply to big companies, but the small SMB, like small to medium businesses, I feel like the
Mm.
content gap is massive and they're not really utilizing it. So hence I'm switching in that direction.
And so I see this happen a lot of the time with agency owners. So my question, and it's a broader question for those people that are watching, is it that the market has moved and you've decided to move out of the market because you've not moved with the market because people still buy paid media services? There are so many companies that run ad campaigns that will more than likely never change. It is a necessity in many instances when companies want to launch into new markets, new product, new industry. So what I think sometimes happens is because, and it might not be the case in your case, and that we'll come to figure out. But what sometimes happens is that people attack a niche, don't get the results they're looking for, and then determine to jump ship. And the problem inherently with that is how attached you are to the second niche that you enter, and whether 6 months down the line, just as a non-specific timeline, a specific one actually, whether if you don't get the result that you hope you'll get, whether you'll jump again. So that's, I think, a challenge that changing industries won't resolve. Now, it may be the case, and this is what sometimes lead generators, let's say, because we talk about agency ownership, but when you're in the space where you're deciding or trying to pick between industries, often it's a function of not getting enough inquiries coming in, whether inbound or outbound, to sufficiently convert them into paid projects. And then the actual question is that what is the skill that I need to optimize for? And is the skill, and as we said, and it's very, very normal in an agency model, we as small business owners, whether you're five, four, five, six, seven figures, even probably a couple of seven figures. Ryan Stewart's a good example in the SEO industry. He still talks about using subcontractors that will hire off Upwork and other remote hiring platforms. And he runs a SEO agency that does $50 million. So, to be honest with you, people do it at many different levels within the SMB market. So, the question is, I think, have you, and this is what I would put out to any agency owner if you're still struggling to get, because it's not about one of the problems with a lot of the advice that's out there, it talks to you about how to get your first client, but the problem is building the consistent pipeline of inquiries. And that can then dictate everything else. And that is a skill, of course, that has some ability to carry over into different niches. And that's why in the example you just outlined, the only reason that you guys didn't hear it on the recording, but I had three coffee shops. Not because and all the coffee I sold all three. The first two I made a loss on. The third one I made money on, but they weren't businesses that I was successful at. I net probably lost money, even if I sold the final cafe for maybe about £80,000. So 90. So on ostensibly on the surface, people would say, "Oh wow, what a success." That business fucking failed, right? But what's important here is how was I able to get to that place in the first place? Coffee shops. I can't make a cup of coffee. That's not the skill that I've optimized for. The skill that I've made a huge focus upon is the ability to generate leads. Because if you can, of course, generate enough leads, you can then have enough attempts at improving your sales process, improving your pitch. You then take a client on. You then have to figure out fulfillment. If your fulfillment's bad, clients leave, you get a bad rep. So you have to, or you will over time, figure out fulfillment because you get enough cracks at the whip. We literally, and the people that are watching don't know this, but Richard engaged with Pearl Lemon for email marketing. Actually, it didn't work out. He was happy with the effort. That wasn't a question, but he felt the team at that time were too green to get the specific return on investment in regards to doing outreach within the agency space to sophisticated end users. And that was, of course, a challenge that came up. Now, the reason subsequent to that is that there's been vast improvement is because we have the same people, but they're getting so many cracks at the whip that we take our L's and we turn them into W's because we get a chance to do it all over again. And if, of course, as a business owner or anyone who's in delivery, you're doing your job properly, you learn from past lessons and then you adapt and build it in and you try again. So I would put to you that the key focus would be to go really deep on figuring out how to build your pipeline and spend some time in that space. Because for me, and we both know that the niche isn't the issue in that there are multiple very, very, very successful paid media agencies. And of course, when a paid media agency is so good that they can get outstanding results, then there doesn't become a question of a company wanting to take it in-house because the cost of change is significant and you don't change if the results are good. You change and if the results are good with a lot of risk and there's a lot of problems that can come with it. So, but what sits underneath all of that is a massive, massive, massive focus. And I would put to you that it's a question of and knowing you, and this is where sometimes also comes the other challenge. It's a question of optimizing, focusing on the right thing. For the moment, I'd say the right thing to focus upon is improving your lead generation skills. I would say that because you, especially you, and this is why to a degree it didn't work with us, you're a sophisticated end user yourself. There's no gap between us in technical ability in respect of setting up a email campaign as an example, because I know that we did cold email outreach. I know, and you know, and I know that you know that you could set up an entire email campaign yourself. And There might be some mistakes you'll make along the way, but with enough tweaks, you'll at least technically get it to deliver. But the delivery in terms of your course building up a pipeline and me knowing you, Richard, because of course we've known each other for maybe more than I think maybe more than a decade at this stage. I don't remember, but a while. Like more than a decade, I think, because I remember when I was living at my mum's place and we'd meet up in Starbucks in Uxbridge. I've got a memory of us being on the second floor. So I think I've known you. I think I maybe knew you before. I wonder if I knew you before I even met Daniela, my wife. But anyway, in any event, I'd say that that's where your core area of focus has to be. And you definitely need to put more work in there because the skill or your ability to do it would be self-evident because you'd be generating leads. And I would say that given that we work together, and this is what often happens, is that we say that we've tried something because we tried, I tried, you tried, let's say email marketing, but it doesn't mean that email marketing doesn't work. Every medium can work with enough concerted effort. And of course, then we talk about the relative merits, much like we talk about the relative merits of going from one industry to another. AI's hot right now. So maybe I'd more success if I started up an automation agency and I'd sell small to medium businesses AI transformation. So it's no longer digital transformation, it's AI transformation. And that's the next spin of that wheel. But what again sits underneath that is where the focus needs to be is to get your pipeline up and running. So I just and what again, this is the challenge sometimes have with business owners. We get too hung up on the theory and we don't aggressively execute at the iterative level that we need. So what we might do is read the textbooks from HubSpot about setting up a campaign and then allowing, for example, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to review. Whereas if you really want to make it work, you can, of course, compress time by aggressive iterations, intraday iterations. Instead of launching one email sequence, launch 10 email sequences with 10 tests and keep aggressively testing until you optimize the right funnel that works. If in this instance, and we're just using email marketing as a vehicle, with enough time and effort, any medium can generate inquiries. I think we both know that. And I know that because I've generated inquiries from Angel by finding recruiters that were posting for jobs. But what was different at that time, it may have changed, but what was different at that time was that they would have the recruiters' names. So then I was able to get their email, do it manually, and then run outreach to win SEO work on the basis of them putting the job out, me coming in at 20% cheaper, but doing better work and all of that type of stuff. I've then also done similar things on Craigslist. Of course, there's cold email as well. Upwork has been big, and it's about split testing and not being afraid to try. And I would say that because you can either go deep or you can go broad, but you can do some combination of both. Because if email marketing is not working for you, then you can simply run a SWOT analysis and look at all of the different possible ways to generate leads and figure out which things that you haven't yet tried. And that could be a different form, like a breadth-based approach to aggressive split testing. So you can go deep or you can go wide. And when you have enough resources, you can go wide and deep. But that's often not practical. So there's a question as to whether you want to go deep or you want to go wide. So going deep would be the 10 different split tests on cold email. One of the other things that I think gets missed in a lot of the advice that I see is that you've got to enjoy the process, of course. And if you don't, you will not do the level of split testing required on email. And I could speak to you until I'm blue in the face about you could launch on whatever cold email platform that you want. They have relatively some different nuances in terms of features and functionalities. You've got your different email sequences, but if you get bored, you're going to do a bad job. Of course, it's then we get into questions of discipline and but it's easier to optimize for things that you enjoy doing. So if you find that you enjoy more throwing up a profile on Upwork and then posting an ad on a classified ads website, lurking in Facebook forums, I would then look at the ultimately split test based upon breadth and have a look at cost versus return. But that's where I think the focus is, like figuring out how to generate the inquiry. Of course, this is an age-old problem. Don't get me wrong. So many people and so many companies struggle because of pipeline. I've spoken now to on Facebook just because I put a Facebook update out, and you saw the whole agency thread, and then I've got people on DMs talking here and there, and I'm working with people that I have a genuine level of care about first because I know you and we've been on this journey. We've been fucking in this for a decade, so I've seen your journey and as you've seen mine, and the thing that has significantly contributed to the small semblance of success that I have. Because, there's guys, of course, like Ryan Stewart that are doing 50 mil, and I'm not doing 50 mil. So what do I know? But the little thing that has helped me, at least, although one problem that I've solved is getting a sense of how to deliver leads into an inbox. So just really, really focus on that, but look at it like a beginner again. Because the typical rebuttal from someone who I've said this to before, and this is I don't believe this will be a rebuttal, by the way, but a typical rebuttal might be, yeah, but I've tried email, I have looked at the latest tutorials, and I have run already 7 different split tests and it didn't work. And I'd always say to anyone who gets into that mind space to have the humility to recognize that in spite of that, there's still things that you don't know. Because if you did, you would have made it work. And that's what I sometimes say to myself when I catch myself in these verbal traps where I try and explain away something and I remember and remind myself, but Deepak, you haven't done it. So clearly there's something that you don't know. So be a student again, be a beginner, and maybe begin by quickly going back to the textbooks or just searching further and deeper for a way to crack that problem. Because Richard, I think if you crack that, that's the key in my view to you changing everything. I know that you're married. I know that you've got a couple of kids. I imagine that you want to give them and live a particular kind of life. And I know that your 9 to 5 that you bounce between with this is not ideal for you because that's the very reason we're having this conversation. Otherwise, you would have focused on the career ladder and said, let me optimize for, a 6-figure income and then some through, for example, running paid media and social at any company that I enter. But I already know that you've attempted to opt out for that because we wouldn't be here otherwise. You'd say, I've taken a different direction and I'm going all in on my career. So I'm reading the books, how to think like a CEO, how to this, da 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 that. So I think that if you really amplify the effort you make on the lead generation side, I think some of these other questions will go away.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. The I guess the only not rebuttal, but the other side of the coin is
Mm, mm,
I have
sure,
been testing it for a number of years with varying success. Like some months you might have 2, 3 clients, others you might have one or whatever the
sure.
ratio is. But I think if I'm being transparent,
Mm,
I didn't go deep enough on the actual mechanics of the outreach because it's all comes down to numbers, like you said. So it's like, does the certain, let's just say email in this instance, does a certain email flow work really well, but then slowly die out? And have you changed it up enough that it keeps delivering? Because obviously, expecting the same campaign to work across thousands of businesses is going to be um, pretty much impossible unless you can use things like AI and personalize it, which I've tested. But again, I think going more deeper on it would be like tweaking it to the point where your responses are hit a certain number and then everything else
yeah.
becomes like a funnel after that.
So thank you for the reply. And I'd say to that I said these same things okay, I could make the same, let's say, rebuttal and bunny fingers about myself in regards to the amount of content, YouTube content or whatever that I put out over the years. You know how much content I put out. And I've never made it work, not in a big way. I've got another friend of mine, Umesh, who has always said, he said, Deeps, with the level of value and knowledge that you bring, you need to be producing content because I see guys that are way bigger than you in terms of influence that are not as delivering the same value that I think you do. And I used to think, oh, I can't make video work because I've already put out, I've been, you go back to my YouTube history, 10 years, I've been putting in the reps. Clearly, they're the wrong reps because I've not made it fucking work. Like that's the, do you know what I mean? And I'm glad that you said that it could be, but I appreciate that I need to go deeper. So well done on having, because I have to do the same thing to myself. I have to say, Deepak, you have to have the humility to understand that the effort that you made thus far, even if you think you've been doing it for 10 years, is not yet sufficient to achieve the level of success that you're looking for. Because Deepak, to say that video as a format doesn't work is frankly stupid, effectively. So you need to have the ultimately submissiveness to a degree to submit to the understanding that I've not yet been successful to go back to my version of the textbooks. And currently, my version of the textbooks is looking at Ryan Stewart, seeing him put out a $50 million a year SEO agency that blew my conception of what a lot of people said to me. You can't grow agencies that big anymore, and they're fragmenting, and people are taking things in-house. And then to see, I forget the names of some of the guys, but Kaz Dash, he's a 23, 24-year-old and I'm sure he's making a couple of million a year. He came up in the last couple of years. His heaviest folk, him and a couple of guys, all just focus on YouTube. So I looked at that and I thought, I haven't gone deep enough to produce a 2 hour piece of content. And I've never done it. So actually, there's levels to it that I've not even conceived of. I've seen people out there that are putting out 4.5 hour tutorials about everything you need to know about lead generation. And then they use that as a mechanism to build value and send that to potential companies. Say, this is how you can do it yourself. And they win high paid consulting work off of that. And I'm sure, and I know that you're not putting out content at that level. I'm not putting out content at that level. I've never put out content at that level. I've got that level of knowledge, at least in theory, because I haven't proved it in practice to someone online. So definitely we can all go deeper. And as we both would agree, it's nonsensical to say that running cold email as a medium doesn't work. It's just that most people don't go deep enough to make it work. So this vicious cycle perpetuates that, oh, okay, well, I tried and it didn't work. So I think that, and if email is your shtick and you like it, then as you said, go deeper, figure out how messages need to be tweaked based on linguistic nuances. Maybe, for example, a practical thing would be that some companies that call it fashion, some people other call it retail fashion, other companies call it apparel. And when, that's just one simple example of linguistic nuances within a particular industry, fashion, like fashion commerce, fashion e-commerce, retail fashion, apparel, ladies fashion, ladies menswear. So you may need to change things at that level. As an example, amongst many, many other iterations, don't get me wrong, that's, it's in an example. But I think for the most part that we don't go deep enough. And if you're able to crack that, you probably will be able to reapply that skill in any other industry you go into. And I think that in your instance, that's a superpower here. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I've got that superpower, but that's the area where I've worked hard to build my biggest level of competency so that I can use that to try out things, which ended up with me buying free coffee shops, which I then burnt to the fucking ground. But it's what got me there will get me to other places as well, if that makes sense. And that's the equity that I take with me forward. So I know that, well, I lost it all. I could do it all again because there's some time I spent in this quadrant, which I continue to spend time in because, as you said, markets move and my messages need to move with the market because competition has grown, people's sophistication has grown, and have I grown with it? I can tell you without a doubt that my sophistication with video content has not grown until literally the last couple of weeks where I decided to make a change of the way that I approach it and do stuff like this with you because I thought, okay, I've got a message to share, but I need to up my game because the way I've been working, releasing fucking cat videos on the internet and releasing just bullshit on the internet or releasing stuff about, you can see it on my YouTube channel, nootropics and stuff about my hair transplant. I want to do what Alex Hormozy and Ryan, a lot of these guys do on YouTube because I live and breathe that content. So I was producing the type of content that I would not even consume myself, which is just inane. I don't watch any videos on nootropics. I don't want to do videos on hair transplant. I don't watch any cat videos. So why the fuck am I producing them for? So it's taken me a long time to realize that I thought I was working on it, but I was never working on it at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's good to have that, and it's just like you said, just figuring out what variables would work because not one, it's not like a golden rule that applies to all of the different industries. So it's kind of tweaking that. And obviously, there's so many moving parts with agency life. It's not just like the emails, it could even be the responses, it could even be
Yeah.
the time you're sending stuff. So, yeah, I think I will get a deeper dive on it. So that's super helpful. At least that way I can be in control of the metrics because that way I know if it's moving the needle. Because if one thing in the funnel does really well, it should trickle down to, in this instance, more meetings or more positive responses and just keep working
Yeah.
that formula till the numbers prop up.
And the different and what's amazing about what you've just said with it could be just one part of the funnel and that could trickle down to the other parts of the sequence and that could cause the overall numbers to pop up. That could be more replies. More replies can convert into more bookings. I think the gap between success and failure could be literally, dude, it's probably like 16 hours of intensity, as in 2 hours of email reading up, take notes, learn, try, 2 hours of new stuff pull it, building. So I'm talking 2 days, real work. You know what I mean? Work with intention as opposed to where people don't really pay attention and watch endless nonsense. I think that that's sometimes often the difference between success and failure because, as you know, intentional, engaged focus on really trying to think about what can I do to make my cold email sequence work? What else am I missing? What other parts of the puzzle and layers are there? Beginning there and then reapplying ultimately the process with some new knowledge. I discovered some new things about cold email literally in the last 2 weeks. As an example, what I did was I went to YouTube, I found all of the videos that have been released in the last 2 to 3 months about email deliverability, about cold email writing, about this. I pulled all of the transcripts from about 16 videos. I put it into a Google Doc and I asked ChatGPT to give me all of the latest insights. And I found about four things that I didn't know. ARC records, I'd never heard of them. Everyone talks to me about DNS, SPF, and DKIM. Then I heard that there's ARC records and there's TLS, transport secure layer or something like that. And I asked the team, I said, do any of you guys know this? They said, no. I said, okay, that's interesting. I also discovered that more and more people are saying don't track open rates at all because they have a pixel in the email. And of course, there's this whole debate. And I knew that lesson from before, but then I forgot that lesson because we stopped implementing that because clients demanded open rates and someone said, okay, let's just do it. And it became the norm. And clients like open rates, but deliverability was at work. So sometimes we go back to relearn lessons that were since forgotten, if that makes sense. Because actually, the open rate thing I knew of, but I forgot that I knew it, if that makes sense. And as a consequence, we were using and tracking open rates the whole time. So I, even now running a lead generation agency, discover things that I don't know when I go in and just do a little bit of insight and also rediscover things that I've since forgotten. And as a consequence, we don't implement to the same standard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially in our world where it's digital, that will change every month. So it wouldn't be, you can't copy and paste what worked last year to this year and have the same numbers in terms of
Exactly.
responses or whatever it is. So I think
Exactly.
that's really good. I think I'll start with the deep dive on the outreach part because then, once that's taken care of, eventually, once the revenue comes in, you can build out a
Yeah.
team to manage it all. And that's when
And
you really start to scale, I guess.
and you can apply that to your UGC in agency if you want. It's not that one precludes the other because that knowledge carries across, which is why I'm saying go super deep on the cold email sequence. And then you can say, you know what, let me also run a quick UGC campaign. And in the end, it might take 4 hours of videos to discover that one thing that you then implement, or it might be 20 implementations, all of them fails, but the 21st works. It could be either or. But I think for you to grow your agency, to change your life, to get out of the 9 to 5, to give your, and it's when we distill it down to the essence, it's, oh, bro, you know what? It's 16 hours of focus on email marketing training, and then everything might change.